Welcome to the Well-Seasoned Librarian podcast. This is Season 6, Episode 5. I'm your host, Dean Jones, and today is St. Patrick's Day, and I'm speaking to a wonderful chef and writer, Darina Allen. Darina runs the famous Ballymaloe Cookery School and is published in numerous books such as Irish Traditional Cooking, A Year at Ballymaloe's Cooking School, Healthy, Gluten-free Eating, Easy Entertaining, A Simple, Delicious Christmas, 30 Years at Ballymaloe, Grow, Cook, Nourish, and the most recent one is Forgotten Skills of Cooking. In addition, Darina has been on multiple programs teaching cooking and has her own YouTube channel. I really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to Darina, and I really think you're going to enjoy this. Well, I want to thank you for doing the podcast with me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me. That was really nice. Liven up my afternoon on a drizzly day in Ireland.
This is so surreal to be talking to you at all, because I mean, I've always been a fan of your work and seeing you on TV and stuff, and it's just, wow, I feel, wow.
Well, it's great at my age to have a fan. It's very good. I like that.
am. Oh, I love Irish cooking, and getting to read about it here in America. It's so wonderful to read about it, and it's really dear to my heart. And it's something I've cooked for my son. He grew up with it, even though, we're not Irish, and I've never been to Ireland. We actually have a window to your food through your books and your TV appearances. So it's really nice.
A lot of Irish food, particularly more traditional Irish food, is very just comforting, simple, comforting, delicious food that you love to kind of sit down around the kitchen table with and have a kitchen supper.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we weren't having a lot of money and when things were kind of tight, I was always able to make this stuff. And it wasn't like we had to go out and get anything that was hard to find. Everything was always there.
Yeah. Lots of lovely potato dishes and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he grew up with potato scones and, and a lot of things like that. And he just really liked them, and all the baked goods, I like to bake. So that was always one of my first go-tos.
Oh, good. That's really nice to hear. And you're sure you don't have any Irish blood in there?
That's a funny story. We thought we did. My mother had always told us we did. So I became one of those obnoxious Americans that always talks about his Irish heritage on St. Patrick's Day and makes an ass out of himself. And I learned Danny Boy and all this stuff. And then my brother did our genealogical. He says, we are nothing but British. We just have British, and just like nothing but British. And he said, it's embarrassing because we're the most homogeneously British people in the world. And I'm like, wow, I feel like an idiot.
Well, never mind. I'll adopt you.
Thank you.
I'll make you an honorary Irish person. Okay.
That is wonderful. I'll get my things together to move tomorrow.
Good. There we go.
Do they need any more librarians there? I'd love to live there.
Oh my God, I certainly need a librarian for my library. It's a disaster. We're actually cataloging it at the moment, and I've got like maybe 4,000 cookbooks and stuff. You can imagine. I'm just worrying that the floor isn't actually strong enough to keep them up. But anyway, yeah, but we are cataloging, but at the same time, if you're over this way, you can give me some advice.
I would love that. If you need me, I am there for you. I would travel to Ireland to help you. That would be, God, that would be like something of my entire, that would be like the highlight of my entire life.
Well, that's the best offer I've got this afternoon, I can tell you.
Yeah, that would be a dream. I will call and I will come.
Oh, thank you. Now,
I've been doing research about you, and I've really loved getting a chance to read about your life. And I really liked hearing about how it was for you growing up, and how you got into cooking and working in the hospitality business. Do you want to talk about growing up? Like, where did food start with you? Like, your interest in food, how did it start?
Good. Well, basically, I'm the eldest of 9 children in a typical Irish family of my generation. And so my mother, I was brought up in a country village, actually, up in the Midlands of Ireland. And my father was a merchant. He had a farm as well. And my mother absolutely loved to cook. And she cooked every single day, and she made soda bread every day. And when we were running home from school, you'd run into the kitchen, you'd smell the bread or scones coming out of the stove in the kitchen. And that was my childhood. It was my norm. And so, and with 9 of us, you can imagine when they'd finished tidying up from one meal, it was time to start for another. So there was always cooking going on in our house. And we also had a kitchen garden and apple trees and some plum trees and gooseberries and blackcurrants and also hens. And we had a house cow, a Kerry cow, a wicked cow, but with very good milk. Kerry milk is very, very good milk. So anyway, we had lovely ingredients, very simple, delicious food. And so I learned how to cook and how to bake bread, all of those kind of things in a way without even realizing I was learning, because that's the way the skills were passed on years ago from mother to daughter. You'd help, of course, to get the meals, to prepare the meals. And as you were helping, you were inadvertently, obviously learning. So, and then I went actually to, I went to the village school first, and then I went to a boarding school in Wicklow, which was a couple of hours drive away, actually, where I was educated by the Dominican nuns, and who were considered at that stage, and indeed are, very visionary nuns. And so anyway, they were encouraging us girls. Now we're talking about the 60s, the mid 60s to late 60s, and they were encouraging us girls, because of course it was only girls in my boarding school, to have a proper career, do medicine, do the sciences, do architecture, law, etc. And all I wanted to do was to cook or to garden. They were the only 2 things I knew anything about from my home life. And so anyway, they didn't think much of that for an idea, I can tell you. I remember one of the nuns, she was a little small nun, and she drew herself up to her full height. And when I told her this, she said to me, well, you're never going to need that, my dear. Or, you're going to have somebody to cook for you, or to do your gardens and so on, because you're going to be a career woman. And anyway, I still persisted. And although my friends were doing law and medicine and everything, and anyway, they said, right, well, in that case, you'll have to do hotel management or else do a degree in horticulture. And I had to plan for one or the other. And so I actually decided I would do hotel management, even though I wasn't a bit interested in the management bit of it. I used to mitch classes and go off and play poker, but I never missed cooking class during my course. And then I ended up marrying a horticulturalist. So I had both things in the end. And then, of course, this is at a time now in the late 1960s here in Ireland, where men were chefs. A woman could simply not get a job in a top kitchen. And I was desperate at the end of my course to learn more about fresh herbs, about ice cream, about terrines and pâtés and soufflés and all the sort of things that sounded super exotic. And I remember, and virtually everybody in my class had got a job. It was just a few weeks before the end of the course, and virtually everybody had actually already settled and got a job. And the sort of job you would aspire to, having done this management course, was an assistant manager in one of the top hotels in Dublin, the Shelburne, Russell, or so on. And you'd have a lovely little uniform with your name on it saying you were assistant manager. As far as I was concerned, that was another name for slave. But anyway,
yeah,
I didn't want that. So, and I often say to my students now, you never know in your life what's the tiny little thing that could change the course of the rest of your life. And actually, in my case, quite close to the end of the course, I met one of the senior tutors in the corridor one day, and she stopped me and she said, you haven't got a job yet. Because actually at that stage, there were only a few hundred students in the college. There are now thousands, of course. But I said, well, no, I'm sorry, I haven't, because I really want to get into a top kitchen, and I can't get into a top kitchen. And I want to learn I told her about what I want to learn about. And basically she told me I was too fussy. But anyway, she said, funny, the other night, I had dinner with some friends. They were talking about this woman down in Cork, this extraordinary woman who seems to have opened a restaurant in their own house, way out in the country in the middle of a farm. And she writes the menu every day, depending on what is in her gardens and what they live near the sea, depending on what fish comes in from the boats in Ballycotton that evening. And I know that she said, I remember them saying that they have a Jersey herd, and she makes her own homemade ice cream, and they have their own pigs and a walled garden and everything. I couldn't believe my ears. And she said she uses lots and lots of fresh herbs in her cooking. And I couldn't believe it. It was like ticking all the boxes. And then I said, that sounds perfect. And because she was a woman, there was a possibility maybe of going with her. And anyway, she said she couldn't remember the name of the woman, but she said, look, I'll go back to my friends and ask them. And she came back to me a few days later with a little piece of paper and she said, that's the name of that woman I was telling you about, write to her. And the name on the piece of paper was Myrtle Allen.
Oh, yeah.
And who then became my mother-in-law. So I became a member of the family by the simple expedient of marrying the boss's son. So that's how it's done.
I like
so
that.
Anyway, long story, but then of course I came to Ballymaloe and met Myrtle, such an inspiration, and she reinforced everything that all my mother's values around food. And actually, you see, because in hotel school they were really telling us, in a way, almost urging us to use, a lot of convenience foods and freeze-dried things and things like that. And my mother and indeed Myrtle were all about fresh and using what was in season and all of that. Now, this is in the late 60s when it was, and local was actually a derogatory term at that stage, where Myrtle really knew how good the local ingredients were and bought from our local butchers and from our, built up a whole network of suppliers who reared her chickens and ducks and geese and made cheese for her, smoked fish, etc., in the area. And of course, at that stage, we do have to remind ourselves that at that stage, when restaurants opened, the chef wrote the menu and it was the same 10 years later. The idea of actually writing the menu and every day was considered to be incredibly amateurish. Yeah. And now, of course, there are great terms for all these things, cooking from scratch, farm table, etc. And of course, Myrtle, without realizing it, with no training whatsoever, she was a home cook who taught herself, but very intelligent woman, and traveled a bit and all of that. But she, without realizing it, was just such an incredible pioneer and was, eventually her influence spread really not through this country, not just through this country, but literally all over the world.
Now, I think from what I've read about your biography, Miss Allen was just one of the many strong role models you had through your life. Do you want to talk about some of your strong role models that were women?
Well, I suppose the earliest ones were my mother and Myrtle, for that matter. But then there were, of course, when I started the cooking school in 1983 here on our farm, as a way of keeping the roof over our heads and passing on Myrtle's philosophy and her, the skills and the recipes I learned from her, and then building on that. And then, of course, the wonderful thing was then, when I opened the school, I suddenly realized that I could pick up the phone to some of my food heroes around the world and invite them to the cooking school to teach a guest chef course. And so that was amazing. So I remember one of the first people I invited, was actually Marta Jaffrey, whose name you will know and who's become, and for many years now, a great friend, and she and her husband. And I remember picking up the phone and ringing America, dialing America. I had never, ever telephoned America. And I was like, I really had to steady myself, and I'd been given her phone number by the Zan Stewart or Zan Zakharov, who was the food editor of Gourmet magazine at that time, because Gourmet had actually heard about us. And they were so curious about this cooking school on a farm in Ireland. And so they sent somebody over to do a story. And that was in, I think, March 1986. Anyway, Zan then, who was the food editor who'd come over to do the story, she gave me the Marta's details. I rang her up and I remember hearing the phone ringing, and then this boy, Marta, picked it up and I said, hello, this is Darina Allen. I'm telephoning from a little cooking school in Ireland called Ballymaloe. And I just wonder whether I so admire your books and your recipes and love them, and just wonder, would you come and teach a guest chef class at our school here in Ireland? It's in the middle of a little farm. And coincidentally, the Gourmet magazine article was in the previous month, in March 1986. And and they had done a cover story on us. Can you imagine the first cooking school they ever wrote up? Because it was such an extraordinary, it sounded like an oxymoron, a cooking school now that you travel to Ireland to a cooking school, the land of corned beef and cabbage at that stage, they thought. But anyway, Mater had, it sounded like contradiction in terms, but Mater had seen the article and she had said, is that the place that Gourmet wrote about? And I said, well, yes. And so she said, I'd love to come. So, I mean, I remember putting down the phone and punching the air with the excitement of that. And of course, she has always been such an inspiration to me. Now, one of our most favorite places to go is, of course, to go to India every year several times. But that was wonderful. She came and taught the school here several times, as did Claudia Roden and Shri Owen and Marcella Hassan. I mean, can you imagine what it was like to pick up the phone to all of these food heroes? It was like going to your library, and I'm sure you do this as well, and picking up the phone to the authors. And, for some reason, everybody wanted to come to Ireland and so they all, literally everybody said yes. So it was fantastic for Irish people as well. Indeed, people flew in from the UK and everywhere to be able to have the opportunity to learn from these iconic food writers. So there were many, many, many people.
Now, you studied hotel management in Dublin. What was this like for you to study this, and how did it influence what you would come to do later on?
Well, basically, I had really, I had no intention of being a hotel manager. It didn't, even though I love people. I was brought up, I'm a shopkeeper's daughter. Well, my father would have said a merchant, but anyway, I'm a shopkeeper's daughter. And so I was used to, meeting people and all that like that. Yeah. But still, I really loved the kitchen more, and that's what I wanted. So I suppose in a way, the hotel management actually opened the doors to Ballymaloe for me. And actually, interestingly, I didn't realize until years later that when I wrote to Myrtle from Cahill Street in Dublin, she was wondering whether I could come and work with her and learn from her. She was incredibly chuffed because, you see, she had no formal training. So she thought, oh my goodness me, imagine somebody from this famous hotel school in Dublin wants to come and work with us. So she was very chuffed that I wanted to come and work with her. And of course, I was thrilled to bits to get you can imagine. I mean, how fortunate was I that our paths crossed in life. And I know not everybody says that about their mother-in-law, but my goodness, wonderful, inspirational woman. So that opened the door to Ballymaloe for me. And I never really left Ballymaloe then because, of course, as I said earlier, I married her eldest son.
So is that where you got the impetus to start the Ballymaloe Cooking School?
I'll tell you now, my husband is a farmer and horticulturalist. So in fact, my father-in-law, Ivan Allen, had a big 400-acre farm, which is around Ballymaloe House, or what you would call the inn. And then we're very lucky, we inherited a smaller farm, 100-acre farm, which we've been farming organically, actually, on organic principles for over 30 years now. But anyway, it was with a big horticultural unit, 5 acres greenhouses, a big mushroom farm, 65 acres of apples, etc. Now we're back in we got married in 1970. So, at that stage, it was a very big horticultural business exporting, mushrooms, tomatoes and everything out of Ireland to the UK and indeed to Holland, actually, as well, amazingly. But anyway, in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a sort of perfect storm as far as we were concerned. This was a horticulture business that employed over 100 people. So this was not a Mickey Mouse affair. So anyway, at that stage, there was a big recession in Ireland in the late 70s, early 80s. A very serious recession. It didn't really matter that much to us because we had no money anyway, but we're a young married couple. But we did have several children. And so anyway, there was a big recession. There was the oil crisis, 25% inflation. We were heating, by the way, 5 acres of greenhouses, they were quite not efficient greenhouses with oil. So oil increased by 400% the price in 1 year. And then we went into the EU in 1973, I think. Then this tidal wave of new food regulations and everything came pouring in on top of us. The supermarkets came on stream. And the final thing was the cheap food policy kicked in. So that was like the total perfect storm for us. So instead of getting a little bit more for your produce every year, you actually ended up getting less for it. And I mean, you know, now many of us are being paid, many people who are producing vegetables and fruit and horticulture produce are actually getting less or the same as what they got 10 years ago. It's a disaster. It's a total disaster because farmers and food producers are not being, in many of our countries, are not being paid enough at the moment to produce nourishing, wholesome food. And so it's a disaster in health terms and socioeconomic terms. And basically, you know, I was brought up that my mother knew that our food should be our medicine. And basically, she used to say, if you don't put the effort into the food on the table, you give the money to the doctor or the chemist. And I mean, it's very clear that the less you spend on food, the more you spend on meds. So it's much better to pay the farmer a bit more and rather than spending it on the doctor. But anyway, that's a whole other matter. But that is incredibly serious. So anyway,
absolutely.
And we for a bit we used to sell our produce from our horticulture units to a wholesaler in Cork, and then, as I said, the supermarkets came on stream, and you know, we were beginning to get less for our produce, and they were complaining about, even though we had graders and everything, when we went into the EU, you know, if you couldn't sell a cucumber if it wasn't super straight and exactly the right size to fit in the box in the supermarket. All this nonsense and a ridiculous waste of food. But anyway, we were all kind of reeling from this. But anyway, somebody said, forget the wholesaler, just go directly to the supermarket. So we were thrilled to bits. We got a contract with one of the big supermarket chains, which I won't mention the name because it's still here in Ireland, very successful, and to sell apples. So anyway, we graded all the apples. My husband would go in early in the morning to deliver the apples into the supermarket, and some, you know, this buyer would say, put them there on the shelf, and no respect or anything. But anyway, and then somehow or other, they seem to send back some, or they wouldn't pay. We had a contract, of course, with them. Now, before that, all of our business dealings were done on a handshake, but now we had a contract, and then somehow or other, they regularly seem to send some of the produce back or say there was this or that. And then we thought, we just said, oh my goodness, something must have happened. Then we realized this was not an accidental thing. This was actually policy. Anyway, this went on for a bit. And I remember we had a lovely time every day when my husband would arrive back from Cork. I'd have sent the kids to school because we had 3 and almost 4 children at that time. And they'd gone to school. And then we'd both have breakfast together when he came back from Cork. And it was a lovely little moment every day. And I remember one day, I can still see him walking in through the kitchen door, looking even more despondent than ever, because this had gone on now for quite a couple of months, this carry on with the supermarket. And so anyway, he came in and he said, I don't care if I have to if I have to crawl on my knees, I'm never doing that again. He'd gone in yet again to the supermarket, some young pup of a supermarket buyer who couldn't have grown an apple to save his life, but was on a commission, we now know, to send stuff back and find fault with things. He had again, complained about something. And so Timmy said, that's it, never again. He said, we have to find a different way to earn a living. We could see the writing on the wall. Prices were not going to go up again. So he said, we have to find a different way to earn a living, or otherwise we're going to lose the roof over our heads. Now, when I was at boarding school, and when I was at Codbrew Street in Dublin, I had only one ambition, and that was really, I had no ambition to be a career woman, despite lots of my classmates. All I wanted was to hopefully find a nice chap, preferably with money, that I could marry, and then I would have a few cute kids and we'd go on picnics and I'd paint my nails, and that was the absolute height of my ambition. But anyway, here we are with this situation, and
whole different story.
decided he'd put me out to work. And so, I was very fortunate I could cook, and I did realize at this stage that some of my friends that, if we had a few friends around for a little simple bit of supper in the kitchen, they often say to me, even if it was mac and cheese or something, how did you make that? That was like so delicious. And I'd say, oh, look, it's so simple. You just do this and this and this. Because of course I cooked in Ballymaloe kitchen for years and was the head chef when Myrtle was writing the Ballymaloe Cookbook and everything. But anyway, so I'd say, and our food is very simple, but really good ingredients. Anyway, I'd say, look, it's so easy, just do this and this. So I realized that some of my friends, didn't seem to find it as easy as I did to cook these things. So I thought, well, and why don't I do some cooking classes? And out of that then was born, we converted some farm buildings in our yard into a cooking school in September 1983. And we opened in September 1983. And we borrowed money and worked like, whatever to pay it back. And we're still doing the same thing. But anyway, love what I'm doing and feel very fortunate to be able to pass on the skills that I was so fortunate to learn from my mother, from Myrtle, and right through. And then I traveled quite a lot as well. So of course, and I'm endlessly curious. I'm always asking questions and learning. I was in Morocco there about 2 weeks ago, and again came back with lots of new tagine recipes and some of the Moroccan bread recipes. And we add those to the repertoire and then share those with the students and all of that.
This episode is sponsored by Culinary Historians of Northern California, a Bay Area educational group dedicated to the study of food, drink, and culture in human history. To learn more about this organization and their work, please visit their website at www.chnorcal.org. Did working with your husband, who is a horticulturist, you must have had a lot of knowledge of local plants and things that were growing around you. I remember living in Napa myself, and we didn't have a lot of money, and I could forage food. There was food everywhere around us. And we had in California, we have an embarrassment food everywhere, but most people don't even know it's there. Did you have somewhat of that experience in Ireland where young people don't know what's around them, like nettles and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And actually funny, again, when I came to Ballymaloe in the beginning, as I said, Myrtle would write the menu every day, depending on what was in the garden and blah, 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 all of that. And anyway, I remember local kids used to come to the kitchen door with little tin cans of wild mushrooms and wild blackberries and damsons and sloes. And they'd say, is Mrs. Allen there, Mrs. Allen there, with their little shiny faces, because she would buy the wild foods from them and then put it on the menu. Now, this is at a time when you may or may not remember there was restaurant food and there was home cooking, and they were completely different. Yeah. So, I mean, the people, chefs never put damsons or even wild blackberries or watercress or, samphire or anything like that on the menus. That was, it was just a different thing. So then, of course, she incorporated wild foods into her menu automatically, as my mother would have done that too. But it wasn't until years and years later, I became a member of the IACP, the International Association of Cooking Professionals there, it's in a North American organization, which you may possibly know the name of, on the advice again of lovely Zan Stewart from Gourmet Magazine, because it was in the beginning, it was a lot of cooking schools. Anyway, they would have regional conference. They would have a conference in the North American continent every year, or in this particular one was in Vancouver, actually in Vancouver. And then we went out to Vancouver Island. I think it was a regional in Vancouver Island. And we met Sinclair Phillips. We went to have lunch with Sinclair Phillips at Souk Harbour House. And I remember it was all very exciting because they talked about the Sinclair had an in-house forager. Now, we're definitely talking the 90s. I would say the early 90s at this stage. So now, and I thought, foraging. Now that's the word for what we always used to do when we collected, nettles and, winter cress and all of these things. So anyway, we had this delicious lunch. Of course, in fact, Sinclair dived for his own scallops and everything. And we had a delicious lunch. And I came back home and I said, look, I'm going to teach a foraging course. So we've been doing foraging courses here at the school for, oh my goodness, 20 something years now. And I remember the first one I put on, I had about 6 amused people. And now we're doing it every single season, because here in Ireland we have a long growing season, and all throughout the year, even in the winter, there are lots of things growing. And and every single foraging course now is full. It's become super cool to incorporate wild foods, and to indeed learn, oh my goodness, and to learn how to incorporate wild food into your thing. And also all this free, I mean, the wild food is free food. And boy, have we had the way, and my goodness, have we had an extra wake-up call in the last couple of weeks with Ukraine. The whole food security issue is really,
yeah, that's terrifying.
People, utterly terrifying. The Ukrainians are fighting for all of us, but basically, and we're actually, and just yesterday here at the school, we raised nearly 15,000 euros. My brother Rory O'Connell and Rachel and I did an online cookery demonstration, and then some of the students made brownies, and another student did Sri Lankan. She did roti and some other Sri Lankan dishes for the students, and we raised so much. And we're getting involved now in sending out a whole lorry load, truck full of food with Irish cheese and things out to Ukraine. Anyway, that's slightly beside the point, but what I'm trying to say there is it's really important that we think about being more self-sufficient. Even if you're living in a city, maybe you can grow something on your windowsill or on a balcony, you can grow some of your own food, but also to be able to recognize wild foods that are edible in your local park and so on. You incorporate, and the fantastic thing about wild food is that so much of the food on our supermarket shelves now is nutritionally deficient, because I think there's lots of research, but they say that if a lot of the meat and vegetables and things like that if they have 50% of the nutrients in them they had in the 1950s, it's amazing. So much of our food, because of the cheap food policy and everything, is actually nutritionally deficient. But all the wild foods have their full complement of vitamins, minerals, and trace elements that we simply are not getting in the ordinary food, particularly in the ultra-processed food that many people are now living on, and to the serious detriment of their health.
For myself, if I want something good, usually I have to go to a farmer's market. The grocery store near me that we shop at, the produce is complete crap. I mean, it's worthless. But we have a lot of good stuff locally. Now, I know that you work with you're a big champion of the local farmers market movement.
Yeah. Where are you ringing me from, actually?
Well, I'm from the Bay Area. I live in farm country outside of the Bay Area. I work in like near San Francisco, but I live outside of it. Yeah,
well, the wonderful farmers market there. Actually, I must tell you, yes, you were just about to ask me. I've been involved with the farmers market movement here since the very beginning. And actually, it was a trip to San Francisco where I went to the very first farmers markets. And oh my goodness me, that was nearly 30 years ago. I was going to visit a friend of mine who had a cooking school in San Francisco called Mary Risley at Tom Marie Cooking School, whom you may indeed know. She's now retired. And I'd flown over, and I'd been traveling for over 20 hours. And I remember Mary saying to me, look, we won't stay up late. We'll have a little cheese and a glass of wine or whatever, because I want to get up really early in the morning. I want to get up about 7 because I want to take you down to the farmer's market.
Yeah.
There's this farmer's market's just started at the other side of town. Now, at that stage, it was in what you call a parking lot at the other side of town, even in the Ferry Plaza building, which is now in. And anyway, I said to Mary, I'm not getting up at 7 in the morning, but she's even bossier than me. So she got me out of bed. And we went down, and this was like a light bulb moment for me, because went down, of course, I'd seen lots and lots of markets in Europe and all of that, but this was different. This was different. And at that time, just to put this into context, at that time, as I said to you, I think that basically the supermarkets had come on stream here in Ireland, I suppose in the late 70s, early 80s. But anyway, and they were, pushing the prices down all the time to the producer. And then they also decided for economies of scale, that they would actually they would have central distribution system. And now before that, they didn't necessarily have that. So, and the supermarkets, the big supermarkets, owned a lot of the small local shops as well. And actually, what much of the general public didn't realize at that time was that they would penalize the shop if they bought more than 2% of local produce. And before that, our little shop, yeah, I could go on forever about all of that stuff, but anyway, we won't. But basically, our little shop in the local village, for example, they would normally have bought their potatoes and carrots and cabbage and all of those things from local people. Suddenly, they could only buy from central distribution. So they'd send up they'd tick off their list, and then it would be put on a lorry and come back down to Dublin, come back down to Shanagarry, during the week, and the whole order would come together. Now, it was conceivable that the potatoes from Shanagarry would have gone to Dublin to central distribution and be delivered back down to Shanagarry a few days later, instead of having them totally fresh and everything. Anyway, that's what was happening. That was going on. Most of the local people didn't know that. And a lot of the small local producers who were only sold to local shops suddenly found they had no outlet. So it was disastrous. And local people couldn't get local food. It was incredible. So anyway, here am I, bleary-eyed, half asleep in San Francisco in the parking lot, looking at this farmer's market. And it was, there were people down from Napa and all around the Bay Area. I think I remember a huge, big store just with nothing but sweet peas in tin cans and a wonderful dried peaches and everything. It must have been sometime in the summer or something, the late summer, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, it was beautiful. And then the stall holders were completely different. A lot of them are doctors and dentists and lawyers who seem to have come from the East Coast, moved over, lifestyle choice. Anyway, fascinating. And then I remember Rose Pistoia. It was one of the restaurants in San Francisco. Restaurants, I'm going back now to the beginning, several of the restaurants had set up there, the farmers market. It was a place to see and be seen on a Saturday morning. So anyway, I just thought, oh my goodness, if I could start the farmers market movement in Ireland, the local people could buy local food from the local farmers again. And so if I could get, because at that stage there was no way local people could get local food because of this central distribution system the supermarkets had, unless they went directly to a farm. And basically people don't have time a lot of the time, they're busy days. Anyway, I came back all fired up. I told my mother-in-law, Myrtle Allen, about what I'd seen. And we both gathered a little group around us, and we set up the first farmers market actually in the Coal Quay in Cork. About, oh golly, that was over 30 years ago, I think. I can't remember. It must have been almost only the second or third year of the San Francisco farmers market. So whatever time that was, anyway. And I could see it, pardon me, that this could be a solution, not for every farmer, and they could sell directly to the public at the full price for their produce, and local people could get local food. So anyway, we started with that market, and now, I don't know, there's 160, 180 farmers markets in Ireland, and it is so many farmers would not be still on the land if it wasn't for the farmers markets. And so I'm a big, and I'll tell you what, in a funny way now, if you ask me, and you're not asking me, but I'm just saying, if you did ask me, what is the one thing, if I could just pick one thing that I've done, and I've been involved in I've had a lot of different hats on over the years, what is that one thing that I feel most proud of, or feel was a sort of an achievement that, added something and affected people's lives? And it's definitely starting the farmers markets, because I really, for all the reasons that you say, you can get this lovely produce, and as well as that, farmers can get a blinking fair price for their produce. Oh, my goodness. So that's a joy. And also they can meet the people who are enjoying their food, and buying can meet the farmer who produces. This lovely bond of trust is built up. The farmers markets are a wonderful thing.
I think for me, going to the farmers market is like the best part of my week. I just love it. It's something you really look forward to.
Yes, exactly. And it's a whole, it's interesting, isn't it? It's wonderful to bring children to a farmer's market too.
Yes.
But it's whole, you might go in so tense and it's so relaxing. And there's a wonderful, I mean, I'm often on my store at my farmer's market in Middleton is the one we sell, still sell, pardon me.
Okay.
We still do 2 or 3 farmers markets a week, one in Middleton, one in Mount Point, and there's also one in Douglas, and which is in the suburbs of Cork here. And I often go in and onto the stall, our stall in farmers market in Middleton. I love it. And, you know, there's an extra thing because the customers are they buy for you, but they're also so grateful for what you do. They're so grateful for what you do. And because, you know, it's a whole other thing and a whole other, much more, of course, it's a much more personal shopping experience. But also I find often that a trip to the supermarket is more like for me, it's almost a dehumanizing experience nowadays. Whereas a visit to the farmer's market is, it's such a convivial, you know, experience.
Well, there's another thing that I saw looking up your information, and that was about the East Cork Educational Fund. Now, this is something I thought was very exciting. Can we talk about this?
Oh, yes. Well, another of my hats is my slow food hat. So I've also been involved in the slow food movement here in Ireland from the very beginning. And of course, have been involved in the international slow food movement as well, and Carla Petrini and all those wonderful inspirational people. But anyway, the slow food, which is an international movement made up of people like you and I who are concerned about, you know, trying to find the really good quality food, and also to make sure that a lot of the small producers are supported and that those kind of foods are not lost and traditions are continued. And but basically, it always has an educational element. So we have a what we call a convivia, the Italian word, but it's really like a chapter here in East Cork, which we haven't had any events for nearly 2 years now because of COVID, but we will soon again. But anyway, it always has an educational element. So basically, we link in here at the Ballymaloe Cookery School, we link in with 9 local schools to teach the children how to grow and how to cook. And we send a chicken coop and 2 hens to every school. And every school in our little group must have an edible school garden, and the children must be taught how to cook and how to grow food. And then also they realize we send a chicken coop and 2 hens to every school, so the kids learn how, you know, eggs are produced, and the scraps from their school lunches they throw into they feed the hens. Yep. And then they clean out the chicken coop and put that onto the compost heap in the school garden, and then they realize that goes back onto the soil to make the soil more fertile. So basically, it's a wonderful holistic thing. And what can I tell you, in one school alone, where in 1 year, the first year we did that, 28 parents started to grow vegetables for the first time, and 18 parents got hens. Now that's what I like to tell people is the best way to use pester power. Because the kids went home, they were so excited, and they got their parents to start to grow vegetables and to keep hens. And then the kids come up here to the Ballymaloe Cookery School, and we teach them how to cook, and they go around the farm and gardens and learn about the cows and the chickens and the pigs, and then they pick fruit and, you know, pull rhubarb and come into the kitchens and cook it. And yeah, wonderful. They can pick elderflower. That's another. I'm not sure if you have elderflower in San Francisco. You might be too hot, but
we're way too hot for that.
So that's under the slow food, my slow food hat. Yeah.
I love this because I think this changes their lives. I think it really does. I mean, I never got to be around a farm till I was in high school, and it changed my life. So
yeah, and also actually, funnily, you know, I've written a lot of books, as you may or may not know. But anyway, the last book I've written actually is one called "How to Cook: 100 Recipes That Everyone Should Know," and I wrote this for 2 groups of people. There's about 100 recipes that you can do lots of riffs on, and that are, you know, even something like mac and cheese that you can then do lots of variations on, or an omelette, or a loaf of bread, blah blah blah, all these different things. And anyway, this is for people who are convinced, adults who are convinced they can't cook, because maybe they concentrated, as many of our education systems do, on learning a set of academic skills, and then missed out on the practical skills because, like my dear lovely Dominican nuns, the subliminal message is, well, why would you want to learn any of that? You don't need it. Oh, by goodness, do we need it? Or what? Because then at least you're in control of the food you eat and all of that. But anyway, so here in Ireland, as in many other countries, it's the same, I think, in many parts of America, although Alice Waters has managed to change it in California.
Oh, yeah.
Edible school garden and all of that. But basically, so what I'm trying to, here, our education system, even back to my time at school, we were encouraged to really concentrate on the STEM subjects, on, science, maths, all of those sort of subjects. And basically, why would you want to learn how to cook? So now it's such a disaster where really, in my opinion, and many others too, we're failing in our duty of care to our young people by letting them out of school without being able to feed themselves properly, without having the basic practical skills to feed themselves properly. And boy, have we had a wake-up call during COVID.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
I'll tell you one other story. I'm probably going on far too long, but this, after the first lockdown, which is about over 2 years ago, almost to the day now, 2 years ago, I think it was Friday the 13th of March, as far as I remember. Anyway, that we suddenly had to lock down, and nobody could travel more than 5K from their home unless it was for meds or for food or something. Anyway, I remember I had this woman in Dublin, who's a friend of mine now. This woman could run the country. She's incredibly able, super bright woman, CEO of a company. Her husband is also CEO of another company, a multinational food company. Anyway, suddenly she's at home with 2 small kids. Her life normally would have been, she'd have got the kids up in the morning, got them dressed, maybe get a little bit of breakfast into them, drop them off at the creche, pick them up in their jammies on the way home, read them a story, into bed. The weekends, they ate out for breakfast, lunch and supper. And so here she is, suddenly the reality of having to try to do 21 meals a week, feed her family and her children and so on. All the restaurants closed, all the backup gone, nobody allowed to come in to help her in the house or anything like that. So she was like in tears on the phone and saying, oh my God, can you just give me a few basic things I can do? The woman could scarcely make toast. Well, now this is a woman who could run the country. And she suddenly realized that with all of her skills, none of them were any use to her in this situation. So I hope that we don't forget the lessons we learned during COVID, and that whatever else we do, whether you're an astronaut or a dentist or an anthropologist or whatever, that you take a little time out to learn how to cook. And we must teach our kids how to cook. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. In Finland, for example, and some of the other Nordic countries, no child can leave what you would call high school with I can't remember the name of your final exam there, but here it would be a leaving certificate or whatever they call it. Yeah. And A levels in the UK, you can't get that unless you can prove that you can cook a certain number of dishes. It's part of the educational system. They teach them how to sew, by the way, as well, and how to grow. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we just have to realize that is the importance of that. So I've been running a big campaign over here to try to get the curriculum, to get cooking, practical cooking, re-embedded in the school curriculum. Not that it was ever properly embedded in the first place, but absolutely embedded in it now. And at the moment, they do, we certainly in some of our schools, there's some wonderful teachers who take it on themselves to do it. But in some of our schools, we have domestic science, they call it, or social and scientific, or something is another one. I mean, what the heck? You need to know the theory of how you boil an egg or a blinking, or how a microwave works. What difference does that make? You just need to be able to actually do it. But basically, but basically, at the moment, domestic science is a subject But you know something, it kind of has a stigma. You know, if the kids are kind of a little bit, if they reckon they're a little bit slower or something, they say, well, why don't you do domestic science or woodwork or something? Right. You know, do that, you know. And so subliminal messages that this is of lesser value than science or you know, or geography or one of the other, or maths for that matter. So we have it all back to front. We need both. We need both. Yeah.
Absolutely. Darina, I wanted to thank you for being on the program. I really enjoy getting it. I could talk to you all day. It's just been a wonderful pleasure.
Well, you can do a bit of editing there. I'm sure it's far too long.
No, not at all.
I would say that just if anybody's in Ireland, you know, of course our borders are open again. We're here ready to welcome, you know, lots of visitors back to Ireland again. And the food scene in Ireland has changed out of all knowing in the last couple of decades. So wonderful food now, from the pubs to the thing. Like everywhere, you have to do a bit of homework before you come. But then also, if people are down in the Cork area, we're out in the East Cork, east of Cork City, very close to the sea. And Ballymaloe House Hotel is a country house hotel and inn that you can stay in. The cooking school is about 2 miles further along the road, in the middle of a 100-acre organic farm and 10 acres of garden that are open to the public all the time. So you can come and see that. And by the time you come, hopefully our afternoon cookery demonstrations will be open to the public as well. So pop in and tell me where you heard this program, and we'd love to welcome you. So and then also, I think my new book, Forgotten Skills, has just been reissued, republished in the US. And then, of course, Irish traditional cooking, I think that's still going after 30 years. So so you can have a little taste of Ireland in America too.
Forgotten Skills is an amazing book. I recommend it to anybody. I'll put links to your schools and your books on the bio when I run it for the programming.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry I kept you, Dean, far too long on.
Not at all. I'd be happy to talk to you for 5 to 10 hours. I loved it. It was wonderful.
There we are. Good.
Well, you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll let you get going to your next appointment.
Thank you, and thank you very much. And when you're in Ireland, come and see me, and we'll go and have a look at that library, okay?
I 100% promise I will do that. If I get to go anywhere, I'm going to go to Ireland, and I will visit you.
Well, that'll be so nice. And join us for lunch at the school as well.
That would be great.
An invitation. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye then. In the meantime, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well. Thank you.
Bye.
I'm looking forward. That was my conversation with Darina Allen of the Ballymaloe Cookery School and author of several award-winning books, most recently Forgotten Skills of Cooking, that is being reprinted. We have links to her information on the bio, including links to her cooking school and publications. I want to wish everyone who is celebrating a great St. Patrick's Day today, and really have fun, and whatever you're cooking up, I'm sure it's going to be delicious. Tomorrow in the program, we will have Carolyn Hennessy, who has written most recently the official Guinness Cookbook. She will round out our week of Irish authors on the program for St. Patrick's Day, starting with J.P. McMahon. I love talking to Caroline, who is a graduate of Darina's Ballymaloe Cookery School. She was a great and informative guest, and I really loved getting a chance to talk to her. Her cookbook with Guinness recipes is inspired, and really everything in it is just a hands-down winner. I really do recommend it. Links for this book will also be on the bio for that as well, and that'll be tomorrow. I want to thank Kitty Cat Fan Club and Asian Man Records for letting us use Talk About Love as our theme and end cap song. You can check out the band's information as well as the publishing house information on the biographies link. I hope you guys have a really great St. Patrick's Day and keep cooking.
I've been getting